Hey, y'all, if you ask me, gerrymandering is one of the most American political concepts there is. I mean, think about it. A process which maintains the superficial charade of democracy while still allowing those in power to rig the system against any cohort which might otherwise challenge them. That's right up there with apple pie and baseball, baby. And it's old, too. The word was coined back in 1812, which means it took less than 40 years for American politicians to realize they might have screwed up with that whole of, by, for the people thing. I guess along the way they were like, this is America. We shall let the people decide. Fantastic, sir. I just have one question. What if the people decide something we don't like? Oh, damn, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, no, we can't have that. What are we going to do? Well, I was thinking, how in a democracy, the voters are supposed to choose the politicians? What if instead we let the politicians choose the voters? Oh, that's way better. That's what we should have been doing. Let's just do that. And that's how gerrymandering was born. Now, people are confused by gerrymandering, but it's pretty simple, really. It's like, just imagine you have the Republican leaders of a very red state, and they're looking at an area that's large enough to support like 4 congressional districts, and they're looking at it and they're like, whew, sure are a lot of black people in this area. We all know that black people are never going to vote for us Republicans because they somehow got it in their heads that we'll oppress and disenfranchise them, which is, of course, ridiculous. So what we're going to need to do here is unjustly exercise our authority to artificially reduce their voting power. Now, and then they just start drawing lines on the map all willy-nilly until somehow this majority black area is represented by 1 Jasmine Crockett and 3 Ben Shapiros, because that makes sense. Gerrymandering's been around forever, obviously, but it's in the news right now because apparently sometime in the past couple months, someone walked into Donald Trump's office like, sir, it seems that the majority of Americans hate us and all the things we're doing. So when they vote in the midterms, it could be catastrophic. Huh? Well, let's just not let any of those people vote then. No, yeah, that is the plan. We're working on that, sir. That we're trying. But in the meantime, we might need to do something else. So they called up Texas and told them to start mandering up some Jerry's, toot sweet. And now it feels like we got an electoral arms race kicking off because California's already put forth their own redistricting plan to counteract Texas's. And yesterday, Trump said he wants to outlaw mail-in voting. They've realized that more Americans voting is bad for their chances, so they're pulling out all the stops. I'm telling you, we're like 2 more months of bad polling away from Kristi Noem going on TV. Like, I think we can all agree that women's suffrage was a mistake, right? And that's why I'm okay with California taking the gloves off, because look, gerrymandering sucks. It shouldn't be allowed at all. But if they're gonna do it, you goddamn right, you got to do it back. In the Democratic Party that I grew up with, they wouldn't have. They would have been like, is it really worth winning if you have to sacrifice your principles to do so? And I guess they've just now realized that the answer to that question is, yeah, motherfucker, it absolutely is. You realize what the stakes are here? How did it take you this long to realize it? Better late than never, I guess. Either way, here we go. Buckle up. It's kicking off. Shee-wee. Oh my God, YouTube, I tell you what, one of the worst parts about it, as is often the case, is looking at the coverage of this, because this is one of the most divided subjects that exists right now. You in Texas, you in California, you red, you blue, what do you think? Are you in the media? What side of the media are you on? How are you going to cover it? Let's take a look. All right, y'all. Let's say your Aunt Tammy sends you a link to this article with this headline: Gruesome Newsom is a threat to democracy. Well, that sounds bad. Was that a comic book villain? Not democracy. I like democracy. Wonder if there's any bias inherent in this reporting. You can see on the Ground News Chrome extension up here, right there, far right bias. If you click through the full coverage, you get the broader picture from Ground News. This is where they collect all the coverage of one story together in one place. You can compare and contrast on your own accord. You can see over here on the right, the coverage breakdown, more than 300 sources. You can see how they break down by bias. And if you scroll down here, you see the headlines all lined up together so you can make your own decisions, right? And if you want to sort by bias of the outlet, you can do that. Look at what left-leaning outlets are saying. Some of them more reasonable. California Democrats, voter-backed gerrymander. Some of them a little out there. Gavin Newsom just humiliating Trump 24/7 now. But if you notice over here, you can see this is a low factuality rating and a far left bias. The other one we read, high factuality, and it leans left. So you can get that context that you need to make your decision. If you look at right-leaning outlets, it's a similar thing. The one we already saw, wouldn't you know it, low factuality. But this one, California to redistrict as a counter to Texas, more reasonable, high factuality, though it leans right. So you get all this context and transparency. That's what Ground News does. It just opens your eyes more when you dive in to the hellscape that is American media. But that's not all they do. They have other great features. My favorite feature is the blind spot feature. You can see here, this is where they highlight stories that are not being covered on either side of the political spectrum right now, so you can see what they're not talking about down at the other end of the aisle. More context is always better, if you ask me. So that sounds good to you. You can scan that QR code there. You can click the link in the description below to try Ground News today. You can get 40% off their highest tier Advantage plan, or you can try it completely for free. Either way, the time is now. Push back on the bias and BS. Check out Ground News today. All right, YouTube, man, we're back. You know, it's you'd think more people would care about gerrymandering, except I don't know. It is kind of inherently technical, and it makes people's eyes glaze over. And you think about American standards for what gets their interest, it sort of makes sense, I guess. I mean, Americans routinely watch videos of people shooting things until they explode. You know, so you coming up to them being like, hey, can I get your attention with this, all these like maps and numbers and districts and stuff? And they just ain't trying to hear it, you know. For Americans to tune in to anything political, it's got to be something that truly, genuinely matters, you know, like trans kids swimming real fast, or Sydney Sweeney's titties, or something like that. That's how you get Americans to key in. I don't even know if they're watching the situation right now with Trump being on the diplomatic forefront of the world stage, meeting with the two sides of the Russia-Ukraine war in the past week. And it just happened yesterday. He met with Zelensky, who brought all of Western Europe with him, which I imagine thought there's only one way that could have gone down. He called them up one by one and was like, please don't make me see this man by myself again. If I go in there alone with him, I'll wrap my fingers around his neck, I swear. You have to come with me. I have to send support. So they sent like Britain, France, Germany, all them Europe, all the other, you know how Europe's got all them places in it with they got their own versions of people that run stuff and do stuff. They sent people in there to have Zelensky's back, and I don't know exactly what Trump said to him, but I bet he spent a good amount of time bragging about his recent trip, his recent summit with Putin. You know, Trump was like, yes, just met with Putin. We had a fantastic talk. Met him in Russia. Fantastic part of Russia called Alaska. Beautiful, beautiful part of Russia. Alaska, Russia. Even saw they speak English in Alaska, Russia. I didn't know that. I got there. I saw a lot of Trump signs. They love Trump in the Alaskan region of Russia. I was only in Russia for a few days. Just got back, and we're excited about getting this thing over. All you got to do, Volodymyr, is just, you know, give them everything they want and everything you fought for so far, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. What do you say, buddy? I'm sure that's what's getting pitched to him. I don't blame him. But imagine, like, I know we're all sitting there like joking and making fun of it or whatever, but obviously it's serious. It's a literal war. People are fighting and dying, and people's lives are hinging on that guy, a guy who doesn't know, apparently, that he didn't go to Russia and was in fact in one of the states which he has leadership over. That guy could determine what happens in World War III, you know, the outcome of a potential nuclear holocaust. He's the one sitting at the desk when all this is happening. It makes it a little less funny when you think about it. So I guess it's easier to just talk in a silly voice and act like everything doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Anyway, no, I'm fine. It's okay. It'll be okay. There's people in the room. There's still some adults in the room, right? There's got to be at least a couple adults left in that room. You would think. You would hope. I don't know. So whenever they had that meeting earlier, and they told him that half the country hates him, so and he was like, well, we got to figure out how to not let those people vote. Maybe there's one guy in the corner was like, or we could try to do stuff that the majority of the country likes. And instead of hates, we could try that, see if that helps. So they threw that guy off a bridge and went back to cheating. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. To put this up here as my special Trash Daddy. Please watch it if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel and get all these videos and cooking videos and stand-up and other things, podcasts, whatnot. Importantly, the other one is TraeCrowder.com. That's my website. That's my tour dates where I go around the country doing stand-up comedy. You ever heard of that? It's good. I'm a stand-up comedian. Anyway, I promise it's a fun time. Check it out. But as long as you keep watching these, I'll keep making them. I love you like chicken. See you. Bye.